So what do I think about acupuncture? There's a lot to say about acupuncture because acupuncture is this very vast sort of, it's just as vast as the system of medicine that's been developed in the West, and that there's a lot to be said about that. There's a huge history there. There's huge scientific paradigm behind, how the West and the scientific modern Western medicine is. There's a paradigm behind that. Just like that, there's a paradigm behind Chinese medicine. And I think that's really interesting because what's happened in the last so many years, it's hard to really pinpoint exactly how many years, but we're talking about when essentially the Western medicine and Eastern medicine started to commingle. Okay, so that's its own video because that's just very complicated. But when you get into studying the different systems of medicine, you quickly discover that there's a limitation of information on certain studies. For example, there isn't a lot of books on voodoo. Voodoo has been used as a type of medical practice amongst the people that use that. There's Tibetan medicine. There's African styles of medicine. There's a type of herbology that's used in Japan, Kempo, I think it's called. The thing is, whenever you're studying any subject matter, what you quickly do is you discover how vast its library of information is. Well, when you look at acupuncture, it's vast. By the way, in the background, we're looking at how an apothecary would look like. They just have the herbs in these little boxes. In this case, in these bags, they just have a bunch of these things straight from the mountains or wherever they get them from. By the way, quality is an issue because sometimes they don't have the best practices when they, the herbs come from different countries. So just be aware of that. There's contaminations. Anyway, so I've studied tons of different systems of healing and medicine and approaches. And when you look at acupuncture, you're going to find that the literature is vast. There's lots of books. They're expensive, but there's lots of books. And if you go on eBay, you could get a lot of them for a discount. That's what I've done with a lot of my collection. But, and when you study acupuncture and TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, you discover that there's many different approaches. There's the Chinese style, there's the modern Chinese style, there's the old Chinese style. There's a Chinese style that has, ghost points, points that deal with the consciousness, because you don't really hear a lot of stuff related to consciousness in Chinese medicine, as opposed to homeopathy, where it's very deep and very heavy into consciousness. They have more like these kind of a basic kind of sketch of personality types and emotional states like fear and anger and grief and worry. It's just a different model, much more simplistic. So there's like the Korean style. There's a style that looks at the ear extensively. There's a style that looks at the tongue extensively, the pulse. There's different type of, there's herbs, there's the patent medicines. It just goes on and on and on, okay? So, but from my experience, because I've gone to acupuncturists and my friends have gone to acupuncturists, and I had a very good friend that was an acupuncturist and a homeopath, and he wasn't doing acupuncture. He was informing his understanding of the person he was looking at with acupuncture theory, because that's one of its strengths. It has these ways of modeling reality, and you could use that to understand what's going on with a person, because they do have a way of looking at the endocrine system. They do have a way of looking at the organs. They do have a way of looking at the metabolism. And some people have made efforts to commingle them, so that like if somebody is, for example, heart yang type, they might be hyperthyroid, for example. Or if somebody has let's say they're water yang deficient, They might be someone that has chronic fatigue syndrome or has hypogonadism. You know, they have low sex hormone or something. So, but my friend, he was an acupuncturist and he wasn't really doing it, because what I've noticed and what he noticed and what my friend that's been using acupuncture noticed is that the moment you stop going to the acupuncturist, the symptoms come back. And there's something very kind of simple that you never hear an acupuncturist say. For example, from my experience, I had to take root canal teeth out. You can go to an acupuncturist for 20 years, they may never mention anything about having infected root canals. Very simple kind of a thing, that the concept of it, if it's understood and look, you know, like when a patient comes in and they look at you and say, well, do you have root canals, and let's look at that, you might end up taking them out and your health might improve radically, whereas you can get acupuncture for 20 years and essentially the moment you stop, all the symptoms come back because your teeth are infected. Okay, you have this, and by the way, even infected root canals don't always leak out poison, which is interesting because the immune system is dynamic. So I don't know what's going on with this guy's teeth, but other than that, he's a pretty handsome man. But anyway, my books and studies. Okay, so English. So like the thing is, we have a lot of Chinese medicine books in the English language because we're fortunate. Like, I mean, I am, and anyone that speaks English, we're getting this stuff because we're also getting all the other books in the world. They're translating it into the English market. Another thing, like for example, in acupuncture, they have moxibustion, which they put heat on the, what do you call it? Like different acupuncture points. I'm getting distracted by this guy's teeth, but they they put acupuncture. They get the acupuncture points. They figure out what's going on, and they put amoxibustion, which is like essentially like this burning herb to heat up. Essentially, they're putting heat. They're penetrating heat into the area. Sometimes they use a needle, and they'll put the moxibustion thing that's burning the little. I forget what it's made of. It's called. It's some kind of an herb. They burn that. They kind of mash it on the tip of the needle, and then so the heat will go in. And I haven't done that, but I'm sure it gets very hot. So, there's also an issue with like hurting yourself. I've gotten some things that with moxibustion it gets so crazy hot you're gonna burn. So be very careful. I'm not saying don't use it. You just don't. Just be careful. Don't get burned. Anyway, they don't have something as simple as a sauna in the Chinese system. Sauna is very simple. Moxibustion is very complicated. Now, there's also an interesting kind of Chinese, like with this guy, you can see it. He's trying to put that foot back into place. The bone might be broken in there and out of place. So there's definitely like this. You don't really hear about this in the Chinese medicine. This is like some kind of like the barefoot doctor type thing. It's like basically doctors in the villages. Like there's nobody, there's no licensing, there's nothing. You're just there. They need your help. You know how to help people, and you're the doctor. And I think that's so cool that people, they just do stuff, right? They're doctors, whether they're licensed or not or whatever, right? They're just helping people. They love help. They love people and they want to help people, like people that are genuinely, trying to help. So what can we use from acupuncture? I've been kind of trashing acupuncture a little bit and kind of beating it up, but acupuncture has really cool. The paradigm is a really useful way to not only understand the world, but also to keep yourself healthy, not to get sick in the first place, right? So, for example, if you're a cold type, you get cold, right? You're gonna you would do really well doing yang things. What are yang things? Getting hot, living in a hot place. Living in a hot place, drinking instead of drinking cold water, drinking warm water. That's something you'll notice that Chinese people will do. They don't drink cold water; they'll drink warm water, right? And so So this is like yin and yang theory. It's very basic. It's hot and cold, right? I don't think they even have cold plunges. I don't think they're into the extremes so much in the medicine, in the system. I don't think that's a thing. I think they're more into the moderate, kind of keep things balanced, right? That's another idea of balancing the elements. Now, in Chinese medicine, they got this idea called the 5-phase. And so the 5-phase is something I'm not that into, because some people that are devoted to the 5-phase probably think what I'm saying is idiotic, probably. But what I do like about the 5-phase, because I don't know if there's 5 phases, 6 phases, who knows? It's like this arbitrary number to me. But there might be, in the hands of a master, maybe the 5 phases is just, amazing. I don't know. But the balance of elements, right? I like the Greek system of, like fire, water, air, ground. What happened to this guy's leg? I also think another aspect that it's kind of a breakthrough I came up with. I'm proud of this. Oh, it's kind of a poultice for the leg. The chi theory, because chi is like this kind of very mysterious kind of a thing. Is it blood? Is it energy? I think it's rhythm. And one of the things that I think we need to do with this understanding of chi is, when do we wake up? When do we go to sleep? What kind of rhythms are around us? Because this is becoming more and more of a problem where we have like Wi-Fi, because we're picking up those rhythms. Being inside a space where there's magnetic fields and impulses like LEDs. Those are all, they have their own rhythm. And so what's a natural rhythm? So natural rhythm. So like, what does that mean? Resting, waking up early, getting the sunlight, getting your biology geared correctly by waking up early. By the way, I'm guilty of that. It's hard for me to wake up way early. I'm more of a night owl myself. But that's a problem, I think, because these circadian rhythms are very important. When you eat, these are all a part of what chi theory is about, but they don't really say it like that in the books, in the materials. One of the coolest things that, like reading the tongue, that's another interesting one. They have really good books on that. There's actually just 2 really good books on that. If anybody's interested, just ask me. I'll give you the name in the comments on the bottom. But we got 5-phase. Okay. One of the things that's really cool, they have this concept called releasing the exterior or releasing the surface. So what happens is when you get a cold, your first layer, that's kind of like your skin, and there's like a kind of a field around you that protects you. Well, the disease or whatever, the infection, will get into that layer. And once it's in that layer, you might feel kind of weird, and then it'll get stuck in a muscle layer. And then sometimes you get like these aches and pains, and like something will get kind of stiff in your neck or your back or something. Well, there's herbs that very easily just release that. And there's points that release that. It's called releasing the surface or releasing the exterior. They're just hot herbs. But actually, I use yarrow, and yarrow is not a really hot herb, and that always works. Makes me sweat, and then it just clears it. It's like magic. It's pretty cool method. I think another thing that they don't really use too much, and I think it'd be a really interesting thing to study, because I haven't really seen too much on it, is bleeding therapies. Not so much leeches, but just like bleeding from areas that are having a problem. I forget what it's called, but there is a method where they extensively bleed an area. Not to the point where obviously, there's U.S. presidents that were killed by bleeding. So that's not necessarily what we want to have happen to us. But when bleeding is used properly, it's very safe, it's very effective. It has a really great rejuvenating effect. I mean, if you just if you're a meat eater and you get your blood taken out once, like donate blood, you live longer because the blood viscosity just comes down from that very, very basic level of giving blood, let alone having, acupuncture theory apply to your blood giving or bloodletting. So something else that I forgot to cover, it's like on my list here, is they were using acupuncture in a group setting to help people deal with addiction. And I think that would be very cost effective. I mean, the needles are cheap. You put 10 people in a room or 6 people in the room, maybe a guided meditation. They can get their anxiety down. Maybe they're having chronic fatigue or pain. You can get the pain down. The government could be using acupuncture in group settings in a very efficient and very cheap way. It's unfortunate that we don't have a system like that, because it works. It's a simple method. And I think if the government was to implement programs where we're using these, like, think of it like this: China is using acupuncture and they're using our system of medicine. We only use our system of medicine in the West. We don't use homeopathy. We don't use herbology. We don't even use exercise, for God's sakes, except for like when someone gets a hip replacement. You have a physical therapist go and help them out. But like, we don't really have extensive exercise programs. There should be saunas. There should be places where people can go detox. People can take a month or 2 off because they're sick. They need time off. People aren't machines. So and there's like this nonstop, brutal marketplace that's just never endingly putting, the worker under, just this constant stress. Now, most people can handle it, but when people get sick, the problem is, in the United States, the way medicine is, it's complicated. So you got to make phone calls, you got to do all this stuff, and you got to organize, who you're going to meet and when you're going to meet them. The problem is when you're sick, it's really, really hard to do those things. When you're in pain, it's really, really hard to do those things. I mean, like, look at how they do it. It's just like this lady just sitting. I don't know where she's at, but it's a group setting. You don't have to have it where it's like, so private and, it costs more money that way. There's lots of ways, and we can learn things from other countries. You go to the doctor. I mean, it's just such a shitty experience. My God, over here in the U.S. Anyway, so that's my take on acupuncture. I think it's a great field of study. I think there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of things you can glean from. There's a huge, vast, library of information and books and charts and channels and you name it, methods. But at the same time, from my experience, it's very hard to find a great acupuncturist, and it just becomes like this thing where, who do you go to? And when you do go, when you stop, the things come back, So it's kind of been a frustrating journey. If you guys have any great acupuncturists, please, I have some names and people, but overall, I think you're going to get much better reaction or results from homeopathy and lifestyle changes and dietary. They do have dietary change strategies in Chinese medicine, so I'm going to give them that. But and that could help you because they have a kind of an extensive dietary kind of system that they've developed. Like, if you have this problem, you eat duck. If you have this problem, you eat lamb. If you have this problem, you eat fish. Whatever. I don't know what the specifics are, but they have this system. So anyway, with that said, thanks for watching the video. Subscribe below if you like this kind of stuff. Put a comment. Give me a thumbs up, because it helps spread this these videos and makes me get motivated to make more of them. So thank you very much, and see you around.